All right. While that's happening, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the January 28th meeting of the Northern Middlesex Metropolitan Planning Organization. This meeting is called to order. Kelly, could you please do a roll call?
Sure. Let me get over here. All right, we have Derek Schuster.
Derek Schuster, representing MassDOT Secretary and CEO, Interim Secretary and CEO Philip Eng.
All right. Brian Fallon.
Brian Fallon, representing Undersecretary and Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver.
Pat Wojcik. She may be muted here. Oh, I see you, Pat. Can you hear us?
I don't see a microphone for Pat.
Ah,
Hmm.
Pat, are you able to hit a thumbs up button? I think your microphone is not working. Or if you're able to click on the audio tab on the Zoom panel and then select your mic or switch your microphone, that might also work.
There is also a dial-in option
Yeah.
for the meeting, which I can copy that information into the chat in case Pat's able to see
That would
that.
be helpful. Thank you. And while we're waiting for that, we also have Stephen Thummels.
Yeah, Steve Thummel's Nmmpo chair.
All right, I don't, right now we have the Lowell City Council seat is vacant. They had a new election, so we're waiting to find out who our appointee is from the Lowell City Council. I don't know if is Bob Rafferty or Tom Boma here. No, and Karen Pulio is not here. All right, Pat, are you able to speak yet, or I don't know if
Can
your
you see her?
microphone. She is
Yeah, we
here.
can.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
she's here. She just, I think her microphone is not working.
How about thumbs up, thumbs down?
So yeah, Pat, if you want to try calling in using the phone number that Derek put into the chat, then you can ask questions and vote that way, and I'll make sure to let you in when you arrive.
Yeah, if staff want to give Pat a call, just in case she can't hear us, there's not really any way of us knowing that. It sounds like we
Yeah.
need
So
Pat
when
present
you
for a quorum.
Yeah.
Jenny has her phone number if one of you want to give her a call and make sure she has them.
In the meantime, we can move on with information only items on the agenda, and pending Pat joining, we can move on to action items from there. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So, next item on the agenda is open forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to make comment. Are there any members from the public wishing to make comment at this time? If so, please use the react and then raise hand feature. I am not seeing any hands raised, but if during today's MPO board meeting anyone does wish to make a comment, just use that raise hand feature and wait to be called on by the chair. Thank you. Seeing as the next four items are action items, we are going to table those until we have quorum. So we will move on to item 7, TIP funding program study. I
Great.
believe this is a manual.
So this is actually going to be a combination of Blake and I.
Oh,
So
my
I'll
apologies. Go ahead.
introduce this. No, that's okay. That's okay. And just so everyone knows, Apple Gold Schultz is no longer with Nmmpo. She took a position at MAPC, and so we are currently interviewing for her to fill her position. So we will be back up to a staff of 3 very soon. But so right now I'm filling in for Apple, who did the work on the design advancement program. As we discussed last month in early December, if you recall, we had space set aside on our Unified Planning Work Program to study 2 potential new funding programs on the NMMPO tip. And these would both be pilot programs that we would be implementing as part of our next tip funding cycle. So, you know, in the agenda item that's right after this, where we talk about the schedule for the development of the tip and UPWP, I can talk about where that fits in. But right now, we're studying these 2 programs. One is to help our communities fund early design or pre-construction work for infrastructure projects. And this is to really help our communities advance those projects to tip readiness. It's been a struggle. I think getting that funding for design can be a big barrier to getting projects in the tip. And so we're trying to find ways to help our communities do that. And then Blake Acton, who will provide an overview of where we're at on our small bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure program. And this is a program to fund lower cost standalone or quick build bicycle or pedestrian improvements. And so he'll go into that. So just as a reminder where we're at with the overall schedule for this, staff did a review of other programs at other MPOs, had conversations with MassDOT, looked at federal funding sources. That was in November. And in December, started to develop those program recommendations and application criteria, like how are we going to evaluate those incoming projects? We are continuing with stakeholder engagement, so we're having conversations with our municipal engineers and planners to understand what sorts of projects are they seeking funding for and how would those fit into these two different pilot programs. As we move into the development of the 2027 to 2031 tip, we'll be presenting to the MPO some scenarios that include funding for these 2 pilot programs. So the MPO will have an opportunity to weigh in and vote on how these pilot programs may work their way into the next several years of tip funding. And we'll issue a final report on this in advance of our next MPO meeting. So you'll have like the full criteria and an exploration of how we came to develop this recommended pilot study. Focusing first on the design advancement program, this is funding for design is actually an eligible activity under federal regulations, and MassDOT has been working with a number of MPOs across the state to help. Because we're not alone in having issues getting design funded for our communities. And so MassDOT's developed some guidance and resources to help it navigate this process. We've reached out to our municipal engineers to find out, like, are there projects that they would want to seek funding for? And we've had a really strong positive response to that. I would say we probably have maybe 6 or 7 project ideas that could be advanced as soon as this federal fiscal year. So using some of that leftover, some of that surplus tip funding that we have in FFY26, if we're able to get these projects started in time. But again, the goal of the project is to really fund those pre-construction activities to get to tip readiness. And it's really to help our communities with those financial resources and to increase our application volumes, especially from communities who haven't had projects on the tip in recent years. And then finally, really trying to ensure a steady access to a source of design funding so that we have fewer delays and cost increases, and allowing our staff to be more involved in the design development process to make sure that projects are advancing at an appropriate pace so that they can be, you know, we can program them in a tip year and feel more confident that we're going to be able to see those projects constructed when they're scheduled. For the funding strategy for this, the way that we are going to be moving forward with our funding scenarios is that we're imagining that we will designate a proportion, some of those funding scenarios that we'll be presenting to the MPO in March. In some or all of them, we will designate a proportion of our annual tip funding for the design advancement program. So, some percentage of our annual $15 million or so would be dedicated to funding design. These projects, once approved and included on the tip, we would basically have that set aside. And then we would have a competitive process where our communities would apply to access that funding. Those project proponents would apply to the Nmmpo for funding. We'll review applications and score those projects using a simplified version of our transportation evaluation criteria, present those scenarios to the Nmmpo, and then the Nmmpo will vote on which projects to award funding to. We'll do a tip amendment or an adjustment at that point. For helping to advance project design, our communities, instead of having to fund all of design, they would be required to put in a 20% match. And so that would offset the federal costs for design. Then, once those projects are awarded, communities will need to follow MassDOT guidance. So they can't issue an RFQ or an RFP for the project before they've been awarded that tip funding. And they would need to follow MassDOT guidelines in developing an RFP or a request for proposals or a request for qualifications. They would also need to be very specific about selecting a MassDOT pre-qualified design firm. That said, MassDOT already has a lot of design firms that are pre-qualified, so it's not like you're limiting your options with regard to engineering firms when it comes to project design. And then MassDOT really needs to review and approve that RFQ or RFP before it's publicly released in order to make sure that we can continue to fund that design. And once the firm is selected, the awarded municipality will submit a draft contract to MassDOT for their review and approval. So as part of participating in this project, you're really committing to closely working with MassDOT staff to make sure that that project is advanced. Those projects need to be advanced according to MassDOT project design standards. So they really need to be projects that are going to be eligible for TIP construction funding later on. And then this is about Blake's project, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you wanna switch seats?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
So with this, Blake is gonna talk about the micro projects or the small bicycle pedestrian.
Yeah, I guess we don't really have a name for this yet. We can call it micro projects because that's what everyone else has been calling this. Since it's a sort of a good umbrella term to cover the fact that these are projects that are smaller in scale and smaller in funding amounts. But they cover a wide variety of different sorts of transportation improvements that we could do. So this is the result of some of the stakeholder engagement we've been doing for doing micro projects. And so how this would work is we would add micro projects as something to our tip, and that would be funded through CMAQ, through air quality, federal air quality program. And so all of the requirements involved with CMAQ is a part of this, and also the requirements around MassDOT for doing micro projects. So I talked to some folks from around different Massachusetts NPOs and MassDOT to see sort of how we could put together a program for this, and I'll talk about some of the ideas and findings from that. So this.
You might need to move, yeah.
We'll put it down there, okay. So the most important part of doing this sort of micro projects work is to determine whether or not a project is eligible. And so there's some very important requirements for this. So in order to be eligible for CMAQ funding, a project has to improve air quality. That is something that is not negotiable. So that would mean that if a project is just maintenance or repaving or redoing an existing piece of infrastructure, if it's not adding new infrastructure that leads to an air quality improvement, then it's something that would not qualify for a CMAQ. So there's a little bit of a gray area, I think, of where it's not quite clear sometimes whether or not something qualifies. So, for example, if you wanted to upgrade an existing sidewalk to, let's say, like a multi-use pathway, which would allow bicycle travel, that could possibly qualify, but you'd have to make an argument that that new bike connection is something that actually offers an air quality improvement. So that would be like taking an existing bicycle pathway or trail and connecting it with transit or connecting it with a key destination or connecting two trails together, something like that. Um, and so that's something that we'll have to work on as we sort of look at our bicycle pedestrian plan and think about where there could be opportunities for that. And so another thing that I learned is that air quality improvement can be demonstrated using qualitative methods in addition to quantitative methods. So what this means is that if there is no out-of-the-box formula for calculating air quality impacts for a transportation project, such as bike racks, there's no formula for bike parking leading to air quality improvements. However, there's precedent for using a qualitative argument for saying that increasing bike parking promotes mode shift from single occupancy vehicle to bicycle travel, which does improve air quality. And so bicycle parking has been funded through CMAQ. So what this means is that it's not cut and dry exactly if something qualifies or not. We need to do a little bit of research and see if maybe we could make a qualitative argument for something, even if there's no formula. So that kind of opens the door open for more possibilities than we originally thought. Another important aspect is that the improvements can't be purely recreational. So if we were to, let's say, like extend the Northern Canal Walkway, is just an example I threw out there because it's sort of it's more of a tourist thing. It's open seasonally and it's only open during business hours. So it has limited transportation value. That might be difficult for us to argue as a piece of transportation. Whereas like, the Bruce Freeman Trail connects destinations. So that's something that would be easier to talk about when it comes to transportation value and air quality improvement. So additional important MassDOT requirements for these micro projects is that they have to be on existing public land. So we cannot acquire property through doing this. I believe that is because of the amount of time and effort it takes to do the property acquisition. And these are projects that need to happen relatively quickly. And so given that these need to be projects that are on existing public land, so that significantly limits your options. And then they also cannot modify the right of way. So that would make things like bike lanes difficult to do on existing roadways. Anything that modifies the right of way needs to go through the traditional standard TIP process and comply with MassDOT complete street guidelines, among probably other things. So we're kind of, small amount of funding, needs to be transportation, needs to improve air quality, needs to be on public land, cannot modify right of way. So that's the Venn diagram of all of that ends up with not a very large slice, but now that we know what that slice looks like, we can start to look for projects that could meet those criteria. And then the last slice is that the municipality needs to be able to provide a 20% local match. And so different municipalities are going to have different capabilities for that. So that's something that we need to actively work with municipalities to see if they are going to have funding for that. Thankfully, these are small projects, so the 20% is not going to be a large amount of money for these projects, but that's something that we're going to have to look into. Yeah. Okay, so some ideas as we put together a program for this is that I think these are now we're in the realm of recommendations. So I believe through our work that we should have a simple competitive framework ready for selecting projects. What we found is that because the Venn diagram of all of these requirements is a small slice, NPOs are not getting like tons of applications for projects like this. It's difficult to find projects. So instead of us, creating and spending all of our time on creating criteria and points and, coming up with some kind of way of selecting projects, instead, we should have some simple ideas of how we could do that if we do get lots of projects, but spend most of our resources and time looking for actual projects and screening them. Since we shouldn't expect us to just get lots of projects. We need to go find the projects because these requirements are somewhat strict and a little bit difficult. And we can't expect municipalities to just have projects that meet all these requirements sitting around. And so what we need to do as NIMCOG, I believe, is to sort of work on building an active project pipeline of ideas of projects of, extend this trail here or add a bus stop here or bus shelter here, add bike racks there, like kind of have a running list of pipeline projects that we check in with the municipalities, at least maybe like quarterly or maybe twice a year, just to be like, is this something that you're still interested in doing? Are you gonna have the 20% match? Do you want to do it for this year? And kind of keep, hold municipalities, hold the hands of municipalities to see if these are projects that they still want to do. And because another limitation on this is that municipalities have their own work, their own timelines for things, and they might not want to put a bus shelter on a road that they're going to repave next year or something like that, but maybe they'll want to do it the year after that. So kind of keeping these projects sort of in a list so that we can pull them out when the timing is right and the funding is there. So another thing that we could do is we could put like a study on our UPWP specifically to go find these projects. Something that the Cape Cod Commission has is a bike rack inventory of all the bike racks in their entire region. So that helps justify a need for bicycle parking if there's a gap in their network. And we don't currently know where our bicycle parking is in the region, so that's a potential project we could do. I know that there could be more in downtown Lowell, just from personal experience. But knowing where that is and how many there is something that we could potentially use for justifying a project down there. And then also looking around, like we could do a study looking for opportunities for trail extensions. If we have a small amount of money, is there low hanging fruit for maybe connecting some fragmented trails in the region, or adding an additional connection to an existing trail or something like that we could do to improve the multi-use path and bicycle network in the region. And looking for those is something that is going to require time and staff effort, so maybe it could just be its own study. So that's this. So potential phase one projects as we go into our first year of doing this. So I think that the best thing for us to do early on is to focus on bike racks. That's because it's relatively easy for municipalities to meet that 20% match on something like bike racks. They're pretty affordable. And MassDOT, there's precedent that municipalities can meet that 20% match by handling the installation of those bike racks. That's something that has been done in Cape Cod Commission. And so some municipalities may find that to be relatively easy and straightforward to acquire a bicycle rack and then handle the installation. And then we would help get them reimbursed for purchasing the racks themselves. And so if we went down the bike rack route, what we could do is kind of be sort of a middleman, if you will, sort of in between MassDOT and the municipality, and sort of help create a pipeline for lots of bike racks. So once Cape Cod Commission got it going, I think they funded almost like 100 new bike racks in their region over the years. So once we kind of get it going, then it becomes sort of like we can get efficiencies in the administration and billing, and the municipality can figure out what to do and what to order, and maybe we can actually make some substantial improvements to bicycle parking in the region. Something that Cape Cod was talking about is that if the bicycle parking that currently exists is insufficient, like it's using the old style bicycle racks that don't let you actually secure the frame to the bike, or the frame to the rack. They have upgraded those to modern style racks that allow for secure parking. And that's something that has been acceptable within the program, because the old racks were insufficient for actual parking needs for bikes today. So that's something that we could also look into, as well as that I know of there's bicycle parking in the region that is kind of that old style. And so maybe we could look into upgrading those to more modern style as well. I'm thinking of the ones at Gallagher right now off the top of my head. That's the older style. Another possibility is we could do bike share. So Central Massachusetts has been looking into this, and I have a contact at Metro Mobility. So there's a new bicycle share station at Gallagher. And that's funded by some state grant that I don't know off the top of my head at the moment. But Metro Mobility is interested in expanding and adding new stations throughout eastern Massachusetts right now. And this is something that is explicitly allowed in CMAQ to fund. So if municipalities in our region are interested in this, then we could look into adding additional bike share stations for Metro Mobility. We can also do bus shelters potentially, since that would increase transit ridership potentially. We currently have data within our bus stop inventory, and we have ridership data by stops now, so we could prioritize where bus shelters are the in most need, and that's something that we could do for a potential phase one. Um, Also, another thing that CMAQ allows is trail like amenities is sort of what I'm calling this. These is like wayfinding, lighting, repair stations. We have a few trails within our region that could potentially utilize some of these improvements. So I think out west, we have the National River Trail and then the Bruce Freeman Trail. Potentially could involve maybe some lighting or bike repair station amenities. Maybe we could add bike racks in with that as well. That's a potential project. Um, so then I already mentioned our bicycle or trail and path connections. I think it's important for us at this point while we're developing the greater Lowell bicycle pedestrian plan to maybe include some language in there about doing these sorts of small projects. Since CMAQ specifically wants to, like when you justify a project in CMAQ, it it wants those projects to be something that you've already mentioned in another plan. So it's always good for plans to reference other plans and for projects to have plans that they're referencing. So this is something that it's good timing for us while we're developing this, that we can add some language into our bicycle pedestrian plan so we can make that easier to justify when we do our CMAQ projects. So I think this is my last slide. Yeah. So these are just ideas of kind of two different paths that we could think about taking for our first year of doing this micro projects program. I'm kind of putting out options with letters to kind of make it easier to talk about. But option A is to kind of go for the larger funding amount. That's about 3% of our regional target funding, or about $400,000. This is how much Central Massachusetts has put into their program. And so what this amount gives us is that it gives us just enough money to maybe fund something that's a little bit more substantial than maybe just a bike rack. If we want to do something that's adding a little bit more in a project. So it kind of keeps the door open for those smaller, medium-sized projects. And so that kind of promotes us to build sort of a pipeline for these projects so that if additional tip funds suddenly become available because the project gets pushed back or something like that, which happens all the time, then we might have some projects lying around that we could grab and maybe use that additional funding for. The other option is sort of to take it more of a gradual approach and just do like a 1%, do $100,000. This is what Cape Cod has done, and they've focused exclusively on bike racks. I mean, just doing bike racks alone might end up being quite a bit of work by itself, since there might be lots of demand for bike racks in our region. If the municipalities are interested, I know there's a lot of potential for more bike racks, more bike parking in our region. So there could be plenty of room for doing lots of improvement just with a smaller amount, at least in the beginning. And so maybe we can increase that funding and expand our project types in future phases if we want to do kind of more of a start with something smaller and then work our way up approach. So that's what I found so far. Hopefully I didn't say anything that was, you know,
No, you're good.
contrary to MassDOT. So if so, feel free to jump in, Derek.
How
All
dare
right.
you? No, it looks you did a good job, Blake or Kelly. Thank you. Are
It's
there
a
any
maze
questions?
working through this.
Are
Yeah,
are there any questions from the board on this, Stephen?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm just thinking about Pep Road here and to put on my Pepper hat, but they talked about a sidewalk extension project to help with the middle and elementary school district. And and I was curious if would this be considered a micro project where in a pre-design phase that there'd be no cost for the town and that work would be done through NIMCOG through the tip if I'm trying to understand the process. And then let's say that it moved forward, it was accepted, then at that point in time, there has to be a 20% design match. And can that match be done through Chapter 90 monies for a town?
I I want to take a crack at answering that, but Brian, please correct me if I'm misspeaking on the design related question. For the second part, your Chapter 90 can be used as the match for the local match on these types of projects. For the first question, though, because this is federal monies, if there is any right of way required as part of the job, it's not only a recommendation, I believe it's a requirement for it to go through the MassDOT project initiation process, depending on what the job is. And I would recommend against this program that Blake and Kelly presented on for a large project like that.
Okay.
Uh, that's not to say that uh, there couldn't be other opportunities for funding a project like that, but I think like a whole sidewalk or trail connection, like we have a Safe Routes to School program and we have uh, bicycle and pedestrian investment programs, both at the state level, but also just funding channels for the region to prioritize with the regional target funding. Because a project like what you're talking about for Pepperell might escalate to a tip project pretty quickly.
Mhm. Sure. Is there a threshold in terms of monies you're talking, like under $1 million or over $1 million, or what are we talking about in terms
Brian,
of
what do you think? What would you say for the Pepperell idea?
Yeah, I definitely agree, Derek. I think anytime you get into the right-of-way process, you have to satisfy federal and state regulations and laws. So that really takes you through a very prescribed process, and it can be kind of a long process, kind of a lot of, issues that you have to resolve. So I think that once you start doing that, you're really getting into the tip process. So I think anything you can do that doesn't require right-of-way, and I think Blake was also saying anything you can do that doesn't require any kind of complete streets reviews or anything like that. That's probably the best target for this type of project.
so
Yeah,
in the pre?
go
So
ahead,
go ahead.
Stephen. Sorry. I was going to
Let's,
say if it's something that you could use Chapter 90 to fund fully, do that. If it's something that you're looking for it to be a match amount on something that escalates to a larger project, it's probably better to assign that Chapter 90 toward the town's commitment on an initiated project for a designer, and to work it through the regional program prioritization, but as an initiated project with MassDOT.
I think for either of these projects, I think the rule of thumb is to communicate and
Yes.
definitely like let us know. I think the more we know about the project and any right of way needs or any difficulties in meeting kind of MassDOT complete street standards, like those are things we want to know about early on before we actually accept a project into either one of these pilot programs, because I think it's for some of our other MPOs. um, they've had issues where like maybe a project actually needs a feasibility study before they go into design. And that can be a major hurdle. So if there has to, if a feasibility study needs to be done first, that is something you want to talk to us about. Maybe we can incorporate that into the UPWP. But that would be a priority before we could fund design or before we could fund like a micro project. So talk to us.
yeah, first stop NIMCOG. Okay, thank you.
Agreed. Uh, I actually just had a couple notes I wanted to make. Again, great presentation. There are certain project types when CMAQ funded that do not actually require a match. According to FHWA, we have to confirm with them first, but generally wayfinding, signage projects, and anything that's a safety improvement, uh, a request can be made for a waiver on the local match requirement, which might stretch the money further or be of interest to certain municipalities for those types of projects that fall within the study parameters. Um, but yeah, I was curious if anyone from the board felt strongly about the approach, since 27 to 31 tip development will come up over the coming months, for start small or hit the ground running, that 100,000 versus that $400,000 size. It's okay if the board doesn't or people don't feel strongly one way or the other. It's hard to know what you don't know uh when starting a new program. Jeff?
I'll say something. I don't know all the acronyms, so just still getting caught up here. Uh, as an advocate for the vulnerable road users, I say more is better, but I fully appreciate the idea of building a pipeline and increasing things going forward. I think pairing this with the recommendations in the region. I'm sorry, I'm going to say the name of the report wrong. The regional plan prioritizing pedestrians and bicycle infrastructure, I think is going to be the best way to find the projects. So any way to pair these two things together, I think is probably. I don't know what that means for funding, but I think that's probably the best way to go.
Thank you. There's no other comments at this time. Just be in touch with NIMCOG staff, of course. And thank you for that presentation.
I just have one comment real quick, Derek, if I
Yeah,
could.
Brian, go ahead.
This is probably like a CMAC question, but can repair of an existing trail or bike path be included?
No.
Thank you.
An investment like that can be TAP or STBG funded, but it is not CMAC eligible.
Great. Thank you.
Miranda knows that. We have to do CMAC reporting, and occasionally we get questions to clarify if it's a new sidewalk, trail, or if it's a reinvestment in an existing one. And that doesn't fly, unfortunately, with the federal regulations. All right, that was a very loaded agenda item, and we do have a very busy agenda. Do we have Pat on the call?
I believe we do. I see a phone number here. Yeah.
Oh, was that a yes?
Yeah, Pat, can you confirm that you are able to speak now on the call to make a vote? You might have to unmute your phone.
You can press *6 to unmute your phone.
All right. If until Pat confirms, because I do believe we need an audible or written in the chat confirmation, I think we're gonna stay in the information only section
Okay,
of the agenda. So I believe the next item is the FY 27 to 31 tip and 27 UPWP development timelines.
yes, let me go back to sharing my screen for you. This is our annual update on schedules for the development of the tip and UPWP. So we're heading into what Derek refers to as 3 season. Still my favorite term for this. And so this means that we are starting the development of our 2027 to 2031 Transportation Improvement Program and our team's next Unified Planning Work Program. So for the Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, as we refer to it, this month, January, we're presenting this overall schedule to you so you can understand what's happening next. We have a meeting, our MassDOT and the Massachusetts Association of Regional Planning Agencies is meeting on Friday. Not January 23, it's on January 30. We're meeting to discuss guidance for the STIP and TIP development, and we'll also receive more information about our funding allocation, both for the TIP and the UPWP. and we're meeting today. So when we come back to you in February, we'll be able to share what those finances and targets are for the next 5 years. We will also be participating in what's called TIP readiness days, and that is when we meet with MassDOT staff and district staff and sometimes consultants and municipalities to understand the readiness of projects to either remain programmed in their currently programmed year or how ready new projects might be for programming on the tip. And so that gives us an idea of like what projects should we be considering over the next 5 years. Once we get through tip readiness days, internally, us, NMCOG staff to the MPO will start scoring those projects according to our transportation evaluation criteria. And that is the criteria that the MPO voted to endorse last year, in advance of the development of our current tip. We'll come back to you in March with several scenarios, and those scenarios will include the pilot programs, both for design funding and for micro projects. And so we'll be able to show, how do those pilot programs, how do those impact our TIP funding schedule or not? And then the board will be able to, ask questions about those various scenarios. And then you'll be asked to select which scenario you want us to program into our next 5 years of TIP funding. So that meeting will take place at the end of March. In April, we'll present the full report to you. And so that is the report that provides more narrative about the projects, includes the funding for the program, for the scenario that you approved. And then in that April meeting, you'll be asked to consider release of that draft tip for a 21-day public comment period. We'll hold a public meeting in early May to hear any comments on that draft tip. We'll bring any comments that we receive back to the MPO at the end of May in your meeting on May 20. If the MPO votes to endorse the tip on May 20, then we'll post that to the website, we'll distribute it to our federal partners, and we'll be able to move forward. And then the tip will become our active tip on October 1 of 2026. I'm also going to talk about the Unified Planning Work Program. So this is we receive about $1.2 million annually for staff time and equipment, software, that sort of thing. We can also use that funding for consultant services. And so that really guides the work that we do over the course of a federal fiscal year. And so once we get through that MassDOT MARPA meeting on Friday, we'll know how much funding we have available to us for staff time and consultants and equipment, that sort of thing in 2027. We will present the overall UPWP schedule to the NMCOG Council at the council meeting in February. And then we'll share the budget with you and the council at the February meetings. So both the NMMPO meeting and the NMCOG Council meeting are at the end of February. In March and April, we're basically going to evaluate what kind of tasks and activities we're going to do, or we would like to do as part of our next Unified Planning Work Program. We'll present those activities to you for discussion at the March meeting so that you can ask questions. If you have other projects that you, or studies or corridor studies, or like some of the studies that Blake was talking about, which is like looking at how do we actually create a pipeline of projects. Those are all things that we could do as part of our next Unified Planning Work Program, and we'll talk about those in March. And possibly in April. So then in May, we'll present the draft Unified Planning Work Program to you for review. You'll be asked to vote to release that for a 21-day public comment period. We'll hold a public meeting in early June, and then you'll be able to vote to endorse that at the end of June, amended with any public comments, any comments that we receive from the public. And just like the tip in July, once that Unified Planning Work Program is endorsed, we'll post it on our website and share that with our federal partners. Any questions about these two schedules?
I think you're pretty comprehensive and hit the nail on the head. Good work,
right.
Kelly.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no questions on those, do we have Pat?
She's off mute.
I do see a caller off mute.
Manuel, did she message you or something?
Yes.
And now they're back on mute.
Oh, no.
Say the meeting has not started yet. She's telling her that.
Oh,
Maybe she has the wrong link.
does she have the wrong link? Uh,
The phone number I gave her is 646. Is that the?
uh,
No, let me get it.
okay, one
Yeah.
second.
Okay.
We're just having some audio issues here. Okay. Emmanuel's gonna call her and maybe while he does that, we can, just a very short overview, just a very short update on the bike ped plan, and then hopefully
Okay.
by then Pat will be on.
All right.
Um,
Let's go to the bike plan.
oops, that is not what this is. Okay, so, last December, we, just as a reminder, we're working with Tool Design Group on the development of our Greater Lowell Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. We did a lot of engagement last summer and early fall. And then after a public meeting in November, we released the draft network for public comment. So we had a region-wide survey that people could enter and post comments on how well the network reflected what they wanted to see. So we have been working with Tool to incorporate those comments into a revised draft network. Tool is also working, so they're basically going through, we have this map. We'll be presenting the revised draft network to the Bike Ped Advisory Committee meeting, probably next week or the week after. We're working on a date for that meeting. Based on any comments that we receive from the advisory committee, we'll hold another meeting, hold another public workshop so that people can see the recommended network, review the draft plan, and provide some more comments on that. We will also present the plan once we have a draft planning document, which should be probably presented to the Nmmpo in March. The Nmmpo board, you'll be asked to release that document for a public comment period. You'll also have the opportunity to weigh in and provide any comments. And then we'll bring it back to you for final endorsement. So just a heads up that this is a plan that we do intend to bring back to the Nmmpo. This is part of a study that was incorporated into our current UPWP. And this is going to include a recommended network for bicycle activity, for pedestrian activity. It will also include recommended design typologies, kind of like diagrams like the one you see on the bottom right here, kind of showing what kind of design treatments we're recommending for various different areas of the plan. And it'll also include recommendations as far as prioritization. So like what aspects of the network should be completed in the near term, in the medium term, and in the long term. It'll also include policy recommendations. So any kind of policies with regard to complete streets or bike lanes or signage, wayfinding, pedestrian sidewalk improvements. All of those kind of policy recommendations will be incorporated into the plan as well. So if you want to learn more about this project, if you go to nmcog.org/GLBPP, it stands for Greater Lowell Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. That is where you can find the existing conditions document and our more recent documentation about the project. But does anyone have questions?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay.
Thanks for the update.
Yeah. Any luck?
Yeah.
Okay.
I gave her the number, so.
Okay, all right, great. I'm keeping an eye on the room here. And maybe while we wait for Pat to join us via phone, we also have the status report on transportation improvement program projects.
Okay. Tim, do you want to provide that update?
Sure. It's a really short one today. we got two projects that had changes, 613, 562, Tewksbury, improvements at Shawshene Road, Foster Road, Patton Road, and Beach Street. And that had an update to the project costs. It was basically a $2 million increase. And then we have 613, 109, Chelmsford, Lowell deck replacement on the Lowell connector, over 495. That one, the add date is changed to October of 2027, and which is a year back from when it was previously scheduled. And that's all we got.
All right. Any questions for Tim? I just want to note that 10/4/2027, if I'm not mistaken, is MassDOT Highway Division headquarters code for, although not currently TIP programmed, could be deliverable during fiscal year 2027. Just to translate that. But I think after TIP readiness days, there will be an update on that project for the region and highway program managers in case it's programmable in 27 or a different year. Thank you, Tim. I see that Jason Silva has left the chat, or the meeting, excuse me. Okay. Next item we had was, oh, do we have any LRTA updates at this time?
Nothing on our, no changes on our TIP projects right now, other than what we've got for, the action item on our low no award. But I did want to just say, at our advisory board meeting last week, the board, voted to accept, the Wilmington Select Board's request to join the LRTA as a member community. So stay tuned, for some service out in Wilmington.
Great. Thanks for that update, Ally. Any questions for LRTA? Seeing and hearing none. Updates on our board member?
Still don't have Pat here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think we may need to postpone until February.
okay. Yeah, unfortunately this happens sometimes.
Oh, wait, one more time. Here, we have a phone call here.
Okay. We see a caller has joined. Is this MPO board member Pat Wojcik? You're currently on mute. Is it *9? Oh, we've unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
All
Yay, we
right.
can.
Suspense is killing me.
I should have just stayed there in the office all day, huh, Kelly?
No kidding.
Should never
I
left.
was here all morning.
All right. Well, now we can get down to business, down to action. All right.
Voting. All right.
I think we're gonna advance to item 3 on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the December 3rd NMMPO meeting. Could I please get a motion and second to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Are there any recommended revisions or changes? Seeing and hearing none, Kelly, please call the roll.
Right, Derek Schuster,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Pat Wojcik,
Yes.
Stephen Themelis.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank
E-
you.
Excellent. Next item on today's agenda is the FY 26 to 30 TIP amendments 2 to 5. Is this Kelly?
This is Blake.
Blake, go ahead, Blake.
Yay, tip amendments. Okay, so there's two batches that we have. Amendment 2, 3, and 4 is visible on the screen, in order from 2, 3, 4 from top to bottom. So our biggest change, we have Yankee Doodle Bike Path construction, phase 1, which is programmed for this federal fiscal year for construction, has an increase of cost of a little over $7 million. We have quite a bit of information in our tip amendment flyer about what are the reasons behind this increase. I will do my best to sort of summarize this. So 1.8 million of it is due to additional traffic management needs for permanent work zone setups and removal along Route 3. That is the 1.8 million. There's another 5 million that is due to the need for either a redesign or a new ramp truss structure at Elliott Street and Orchard Road, and that stands to be the majority of the additional cost increase. And then there's a couple of smaller increases due to general price escalation from the previous estimate. And then the bike path spur from Middlesex parking lot has been revised as well. And then there's also some changes as far as updates for excess soil excavation, testing, and proper disposal, which is nothing new. That's been something that we've mentioned a few times before in the past. The next one, which is Yankee Doodle Path Phase 2, is we're still the consultant is still working with the town of Billerica on negotiating for the scope and work hour estimates to advance to, I believe it would be 25% design on this one. And so there's currently no contractor schedule submitted. And there's also still an outstanding issue to need to redesign the path around an archaeological site. And due to these reasons, the recommendation is to push phase 2 back 1 year. What's going on with Amendment 4 with the improvements at the elementary school in Dracut. We don't currently have narrative information on that one. We're currently waiting on that narrative information from MassDOT. We will add it during the public comment period and mention it at our next meeting before we actually recommend endorsing these amendments. So that's the first batch. Are we voting on them separately?
The one other thing is that the tip year for the Safe Roads to School project in Dracut is it's recommended to move from 2029 to 2028. So it'd be moving up a year instead.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. A rare situation where a project is happening faster, but with a slight cost increase, which we do not currently know about the reasoning behind. But faster is better.
Yeah.
We'll take it. So are we voting on these separately or just all together? I don't know.
What is your recommendation, Derek?
My recommendation is to not commingle the highway and transit actions. So is this it for the highway actions?
Yes.
All right, then I think we can. And why are these 2, 3, and 4? Is it just one amendment action?
I guess, yeah, I think we were a little confused as to whether they needed to be independent amendments or if they could just be tip amendment 2.
This could
Yeah,
be
the amendments to the documents. So I think it's probably
Okay.
cleaner if you just call this 2,
Right,
just for the record.
For this and it needs to be released for a 21-day public comment period. So
Yes, and I guess if you only want to do a single amendment to your tip, we could technically commingle the transit action as part of Amendment 2, unless you would like to call this a Highway Amendment 2 and Transit Amendment 1 or Transit Amendment 2 to your tip. That's up to staff, whatever
I
you
think we
prefer.
could keep it all as one package. So
In that case, my recommendation would be to continue on to the LRTA changes before we take a
All right.
motion.
Okay, so just to repeat, all this is Amendment 2. So the next part of Amendment 2 are some changes to our tip related to LRTA bus purchases. So LRTA received notice that they've received a low-no award for a low emissions bus award. So that involves the purchase of 6 35-foot hybrid buses. So it's important to mention that these were buses that LRTA had already originally planned on procuring through the second project that's listed, that project had 18 buses, it will now be 12 buses. So 6 of those buses are being moved to a different project ID, and they will be funded through the Low-No award with matching from toll credits. And so please correct me if I'm wrong, Ally. So this means that we're not actually changing anything as far as how many buses we're buying or when we're buying them. We're simply moving 6 buses over to a different project ID and then funding them differently. Does that?
Just changing the funding source for the 6 at the end of the day.
Okay, I do have one question actually that I'm sure someone was probably thinking is, then I think, Ally, do you know why it's $2 million more through this change?
So when it was programmed, we were just using an estimate. When we went for the Low-No, we got a actual price quote from Gillig as part of the competitive procurement process. That was final pricing.
Perfect. I'll include that in the document. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so those are the tip amendments that we are proposing to be released for a public comment period to be approved at our next meeting.
Thank you, Blake. So before the start of the meeting, Ally and I were talking shop on this particular amendment because I do believe that this can all be reflected for the transit projects as a single line item and just reflecting what the Low-No award means relative to the bus order. I'm going to work with Ally after this meeting to reflect that as a single project change because this is a single project reflecting 18 buses, 6 of which appear to be now funded with the Low-No award. Congratulations, by the way. And then 12 with the formula funding assumption for 28 and 29 of your tip. If that's understood by the board, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to release Amendment 2 for the 3 highway projects and 1 transit project as presented by staff. I'm also happy to take questions before or after a motion.
I'll make the motion to release the 21-day public comment period.
Thank you,
I'll
Pat. Do we have a
second it.
second?
I'll
Thank you,
second it.
Stephen.
Yep.
Are there any questions about the tip action at this time? Otherwise. Okay. Kelly, please call the roll.
Derek Schuster,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Pat Wojcik,
Yes.
and Stephen Themos.
Yes.
Right, motion passes. We will hold a public comment period at the beginning of our next MPO meeting in February. And that will be part of the legal advertisement for this tip amendment as well. But the amendment, the public comment period will be open for 21 days for written comments.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Next item is an update on safety targets, performance measure targets for calendar year 2026. I believe we have Sam Taylor on the call to present these.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Sam Taylor, here from MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning. I'm here to present to you the MassDOT's PM1 safety highway safety performance measures. So if we could go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right. So since MassDOT has presented on federal performance measures over the past few years, many of you are probably familiar with this process and have seen this before. But as a refresher, the federal performance measure regulations that were passed in 2016 include 3 categories. PM1 covers safety, and that's what this presentation focuses on. PM2 covers bridge and pavement condition, and PM3 is a catch-all category for system performance measures that covers the transportation system's efficiency and aims to reduce congestion. PM1 targets are to be adopted by MPOs every year by the end of February. And as always, although numeric targets have been established following federal guidelines, MassDOT's overarching goal for all of these measures is 0 deaths and 0 serious injuries. Next slide, please. So there are 5 required performance measures under federal PM1 safety target regulations. These metrics include the number of roadway fatalities, the number of serious injuries, the rate of roadway fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the rate of serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and the total combined number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. These are expressed not as 1 year targets, but as 5 year rolling average targets. So the statewide targets put forth for 2026 are actually 5 year rolling averages for 2022 through 2026. Next slide, please. So this next slide covers fatalities. The target setting process began back in July with a trend line projection of the latest available data at that time, as that's when states are required to establish their annual targets. As noted in years past, higher rates of speeding and decreased vehicle miles traveled in the Commonwealth in 2020, 21, and 22 meant that our safety numbers were moving in the wrong direction. In 2023, that trend reversed, and there were significant decreases in fatalities and serious injuries, though fatalities increased again in 2024. But the early data from 2025 shows improvement over 2024. So taking these trends into account, MassDOT adopted a target for 2022 through 2026. In addition to target setting, MassDOT also developed a 2024 through 28 projection to see what the future might look like if these targets and trends were to continue. And you may recall that we did this last year as well. So when we set a 2025 target, we provided a 2027 projection. So here's a 2028 projection to keep with that same cadence. So as noted, targets were developed in the middle of 2025. So MassDOT had to estimate what the full year of 2025 data might look like. So to do so, MassDOT compared data from 2015 through 24 to the year-to-date data and found that on average, 46% of annual fatalities occurred between January 1st and July 1st of each year. To estimate 2025 annual fatalities, MassDOT divided the year-to-date number by 46%, and then assumed a 3% annual reduction in fatalities between 2025 and 2026. So then the annual performance, or the actual performance for 2022 through 24, plus the estimates for 25 and 26 were then totaled and divided by 5. And this brings the 2022 through 26 rolling average target to be 357, which you see in that first blue bar there. So if this 3% annual decrease continues, our projections show that the 2028 5-year average will be 323 fatalities per year. So then you also see these dots on the inside the bars, and those cover fatality rate. So fatality rate is the 5-year average of fatalities divided by the 5-year average vehicle miles traveled. Vehicle miles traveled for 2025 are approaching pre-pandemic levels. However, with 2021, a year that had a fairly high fatality rate outside the now 5-year window of 2022 through 26, the 5-year rolling fatality rate has decreased. So consequently, the 5-year average rate is projected to be 0.5 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. And if this trend continues, the rate will be 0.5 in 2028. So next slide, please. This slide covers serious injuries. So MassDOT followed the same methodology for calculating serious injury targets as it did with fatalities for 2025. So we also found that roughly 46% of annual serious injuries occur between January 1st and July 1st of each year. So using this formula, the 2022 through 26 5-year average target is set to 2,562. And if this trend of a 3% reduction in serious injuries per year were to continue, the 5-year average in 2028 would be 2,184 per year. And so for the serious injury rate, MassDOT also used the same methodology as with the fatality rate. So the 5-year average serious injury rate target is set to 4.03 serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. And if this trend continues, the 5-year rate in 2028 will be 3.38 serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Next slide, please. So this slide covers non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries are classified as events that involve people walking, biking, and rolling. This performance measure is tracked somewhat differently from others in that fatalities and serious injuries in this category are combined. These numbers have fluctuated in recent years. However, 2025 year-to-date data shows that these numbers may have peaked in 2023, and the state is now trending in the right direction. So following the previous methodologies, MassDOT found that on average, 45% of annual non-motorist fatalities and serious injuries occur between January 1st and July 1st of each year. So the 2025 year-to-date number was divided by 45%. And then a 5% annual reduction was assumed to estimate the 2025 annual total. Please note that a 5% instead of 3% annual reduction is assumed here based on the state's increased emphasis on protecting vulnerable road users over the past few years. And this brings the 2022 through 26 5-year target to 512. And if this decrease continues, the average would be 416 non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries per year by 2028. Next slide, please. So the Nmmpo is required to endorse either required to endorse MassDOT state targets or establish their own by the end of February 2026. And as stated before, although numeric targets have been established following federal guidelines, MassDOT's overarching goal is 0 deaths and 0 serious injuries. So that concludes the state side of this presentation, Mr. Chair, and I believe we have some regional performance content following this.
Thank you, Sam. Do we have any questions on the performance targets as presented?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Just trying to understand better. So what is causing reduction in motorized fatalities and injuries? Is it like less traffic? Is it the weather? Is it signage improvements? Is it road improvements? What's the reason or reasons?
I do believe it is related to a lot of what we've seen for, I guess, fatalities and serious injuries of those operating vehicles, in that with the general uptick in congestion in the years following the pandemic, as sort of like the new normal is realized with more congestion and less speeding. That is helping to drive down rates of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries.
So more congestion is attributed to reductions in fatalities and injuries. That's one of the reasons.
That's actually
That is
been a trend found in other parts of the world too.
Yeah.
Ironic.
Okay. Surprising. Yeah.
There's
Okay.
also an argument that could be made that as more trail and protected infrastructure for vulnerable road users gets constructed as part of, the respective TIP programs of this Nmmpo and others across the Commonwealth, that also will lead to positive outcomes and fewer serious injuries and fatalities.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Sam or staff? Seeing and hearing none, I believe the request is for an approval of the calendar year 2026 performance measure safety targets as presented.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Stephen.
Yep.
Kelly, please call the roll.
All right, Derek Schuster,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Pat Wojcik,
Yes.
Stephen Thomas.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I believe the next action item and final action item, other than adjournment, is LRTA TAM target adjustment.
Yes. So we're going through our annual FTA National Transit Database, or NTD, reporting. So during that process, we have a new vehicle in the equipment fleet. It's a Chrysler Voyager. We had it tagged as an automobile, and through the validation process, it actually should be tagged with trucks and other rubber tire vehicles. So because those are two separate asset classes, that adjusted our calculation of the targets. So for automobiles, which we had 3 in the class, now there's only 2, so that adjusts the target to 50%. And for trucks and other rubber tire vehicles, where we had the original target was 1 out of the 8. Now we got 1 out of 9, which brings us to an adjusted target of 11%. So we just would need a vote to approve this adjustment.
Sorry, I hit a weather app instead of my unmute. Blocked the whole screen. Are there any questions from the board on the adjustment? Seeing and hearing none, could I please have a motion and second to endorse the revised 2026 TAM target for equipment?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Kelly, please call the roll.
Derek Schuster,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Pat Wiltis,
Yes.
Stephen Gunellis.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there any other business?
The only thing we have to note on the staff side is that our next meeting of the MPO will be Wednesday, February 5 at 2 p.m. You're welcome to join us here at the Nmmpo offices, but you can also join via Zoom. So that'll be posted on our calendar.
I think if I'm chairing Merrimack Valley, and this meeting, I may be in person as Merrimack Valley's having a retreat that day, ending before 2. So
All right.
yeah, but we'll keep you posted on that. If there's no other business, could I please have a motion and second to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The MPO is adjourned. Thank you. Before everyone hops off, if Allie and Blake and Miranda can stay on the call, I just want to look at ESTIP together to clean that. It'll take like 3 minutes. But otherwise, I think you can stop the record of the meeting.
All right, I'm going to stop.